morning. Thank you for joining us. Sorry for the slight delay this morning, but this is Cannabis Live. My name is Travis Copenhaver. I'm here today with my esteemed colleague, Dwight.
Absolutely. Hi, Travis.
Thanks for joining me this morning.
Absolutely. And apologize on that delay. I'm still on Mountain Time where I live in Denver, so you can chalk it up to time zones.
Got it. So Dwight's lucky enough to join us today. Our whole Vicente Sederberg crew was in for our big seminar at the Cobo Center we did yesterday. We had a great event. Dwight, why don't you just say a little bit about yourself and what you do with Vicente Sederberg and how you work with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to be in a partnership with Cannabis Legal Group. I work for Vicente Sederberg. We're a national marijuana law firm. We're unique in the fact that all we do is marijuana law firm. We have offices in Florida, Massachusetts, partnership in Nevada, and a big office in LA, and our headquarters are in Denver. And we're fortunate to partner with the Cannabis Legal Group because Michigan is such an exciting market. We really wanted to partner with market leaders and really found folks that we relate to, that share our vision, and we feel fortunate enough to work with.
Great. Well, we're having a blast working with you guys. We got a lot of synergy going, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah, definitely.
So like you said, yesterday we had a big cannabis compliance and business seminar at the Cobo Center. It was a full day affair. Our Colorado team was lucky to join us with an 8:30 start. You guys were troopers. You got through it, so thanks for joining us.
For sure.
I thought we had a really good set of talks. The show itself seemed to go really well. We're going to do our best to make some of those talks available in the future. So if you were unable to join us, keep watching us. We'll make some of that available. We had talks about what to expect from our new law, the November vote proposal.
Expectation of what it's like to run a business, specifically a cannabis business where you have a lot more compliance hurdles. But I really appreciated Jennifer's talk about just like human resources, employment law, sexual harassment, a lot of stuff that people that are just really excited to get into the industry don't always think all the way through. So I think it was one of those seminars where there wasn't a lot of hype men, but there was a lot of people there that were offering like very real, very legitimate, necessary legal advice from employment law to compliance, to what to expect out of your grow, your processor. I gave a really nice talk about civic engagement and participation and the need for that. So there's a lot of moving parts whenever you're a budding medical marijuana entrepreneur at all. And the cannabis industry puts a lot of hurdles in there. And so long as you play by the rules and hire the right attorneys like Travis and Nick and Jennifer over here at Cannabis Legal Group, you'll be in good shape. But there's a lot more things to think about than just putting a plant in the ground.
Definitely. And the last couple of times we were doing seminars like that, it was always looking forward to licensing, looking forward to this industry that was coming. It's coming. We got to prepare for it. It's almost here. Well, now it is here. And now it really is time to think about, okay, you know how to get a license now. What do you do when you get one? Mm-hmm. And we had really, that's really a lot of the benefit Vicente Sederberg brings to what we're able to do as the Cannabis Legal Group. You've been working with operators in very mature markets. You've been working in a variety of different states.
Well, mature for the cannabis industry,
right?
Yeah,
exactly. But those lessons that other clients of yours have learned are very applicable to a new market like Michigan. And we put a lot of that insight into the work we're able to do for our clients. But we also are able to counsel clients in a way that if I was just doing this by myself, I wouldn't have the benefit of the knowledge there because, this is new for Michigan. It's new for Michigan attorneys. Cannabis law isn't necessarily new, but it is very much new in Michigan. And we really value our relationship with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I think is unique about sort of our relationship and our partner is Vicente Sederberg helped a lot of clients on the licensing end, both in Michigan in partnership with the Cannabis Legal Group, but also nationally. And one of our goals is just making sure that we don't have to reinvent the wheel for every client. And so being able to partner with y'all on the license part, and now that we're seeing a lot of the operators go through step 1 and step 2 and start to be like, oh my gosh, now I have a license, what do I do? Being able to be like, well, listen, these are the resources that we have with Vicente Sederberg. This is what we can provide you from the table so that you don't feel like you're starting from scratch.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about Vicente Sederberg. We say to our clients when they start engaging with us, like, you have the benefit of working with us and what you guys do. Well, what exactly do you guys do? I know you have a national focus. You're in a lot of other states. Like, what's kind of your offering, and how do you actually interact with this industry?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So my boss, Brian Vicente, our founding partner, got us started out really representing patients, whether that's AIDS patients, cancer patients, people that really found a lot of legitimate and needed relief from medical cannabis. That's how he sort of started going and getting involved in this sort of movement. He was one of the big pioneers in Colorado. So he actually sued on behalf of a patient to really establish that caregiver model and remove arbitrary limits on caregivers, and that's when you started to see collectives pop up in Colorado. And then he, as well as some other folks in our office, literally wrote Amendment 64, which legalized recreational marijuana for the first time in the world, really. And so that they've always been really involved on the government level. It's something I appreciate that Cannabis Legal Group does, is you understand that like you need to endear yourself to some of these regulators and teach them and educate them along the way. And that's something that my firm has done. And we started off real small just in Colorado, really helping those Colorado operators get licensed and then stay compliant. And then when Massachusetts came online, we opened an office out there. That presents a really exciting market. When California was started to talk about adult use, we opened an LA office, and the LA market's going to be bigger than all of Colorado combined. Right. It's just the population out there is huge. And since then, we've formed a strategic partnership with you guys. So we do a lot of Colorado stuff, a lot of government relations stuff. But I'm in the National Licensing Department, which is really exciting because I get to work in emerging markets. You know, there's competitive markets, there's closed markets, but it's a really exciting opportunity to, you know, have a brand new set of regs to read and figure it out just like everyone else. So.
Right, and I think you guys really were lucky because Colorado has been the blueprint for every other state, especially for adult use moving forward. And being so directly involved in that really makes you really the thrust behind how this rolls out in a lot of other states, and that insight, that just, you know, connection to everything really gives you an advantage, and we certainly put it to use in the work we get to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting, you know, we talked about not having to reinvent the wheel for our clients because we have experience, but governments are the same way, right? Like they're like, oh, here's some very sensible regs that somebody else has written and adopted and has worked. I'm going to adopt and write those same regulations. And so you see a lot of different regulations recycled. So when you have like a compliance program, while they're not exactly, you know, copy paste transferable, you can at least understand the history behind them and sort of what their concept was when they came with it, because it was 3 states ago that first wrote those regs.
Right, exactly. So you get to be in emerging markets. You know, we get to talk about Michigan all the time on this show. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to take a little more national perspective on the cannabis industry, something that we don't usually do week to week. And the first market I'd like to ask you about, I think is pretty close to your heart, is Oklahoma. Oklahoma just expanded a medical program. I know you were very involved in engaging with that. How'd that process roll out? Yeah,
Oklahoma just became the 30th state to legalize medical marijuana. It was a very, very exciting campaign. I'm originally from Oklahoma. I've worked in politics there for a decade, on city council to governor's races. Worked in the legislature during college a little bit. So very plugged in there. And a lot of folks thought it was a long shot. You know, it's a deeply, deeply conservative state. They voted for Trump more than any other state, I think, in the country. No counties went for the Democratic candidate and haven't for years. But what you really see is that this is a nonpartisan issue. You know, Democrats nor Republicans have really taken a monopoly on the issue, like you see with immigration, for example. And so it's really sort of a grassroots movement, and we really saw that paired out in Oklahoma. I mean, we got close to 57% of the vote on June 26th in Oklahoma.
Which for a state like that, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
It really gives you hope for states like Utah is now starting to talk about it. That would have been a long shot in my mind. You know, I've always been from Michigan, but I grew up just north of Indiana. My whole family's from Indiana, and I always thought, there's no way Indiana's going to do this soon. Well, now I'm starting to see rumblings in the state of Indiana. These more, you know, traditionally conservative states, or, you know, areas you wouldn't expect a movement like this to take root. There's now really, you know, there's no political lines anymore. You know, you either support cannabis or you don't. And the types of people who do that really don't fall in any category. So.
Well, and what's really unique is I worked in the Texas legislature a little bit too, and you don't see politicians facing negative repercussions for coming out in support of cannabis. You know, if a politician feels like they're going out on a limb and saying, yes, we need to have medical cannabis in Texas, they go home to their district and they're actually thanked.
Right.
They're thanked by...
It's almost like I'm the brave one. I was the one who could say that first.
Yeah.
It's really, and that's really, I've only seen that happen in the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's really exciting that they feel brave, and then they go home and they get rewarded by their constituents, because they're like, you know, I'm a mom, my child has epilepsy, or my child has severe autism, and this is literally the only relief. Like, if I don't give her cannabis to use, like, she's going to involuntarily have a seizure or hit herself on the head or become very aggressive. And I've met and worked with a lot of those families, and like you can just see the relief that cannabis provides. But Oklahoma is a really interesting market. It did give states like Utah and Missouri are both on the ballot for medical this year. Those are polling extremely well, and when you see states like Oklahoma come on board, you feel confident as much as you can in an election that it's going to be really exciting. So I think Utah, Missouri, Michigan's probably going to come online, and the other one is North Dakota.
North Dakota, sense of love to North Dakota. They have adult use. And we talk about Michigan all the time. North Dakota's on the ballot for adult use as well. We might be the 11th state because North Dakota might declare first.
Yeah, different time zones.
That's
that
right.
would be really
right.
interesting.
So,
I think North Dakota has the longest, the long shot. But they just established their medical program. They just licensed cultivators. They're going through the provisioning centers right now, or dispensaries as they call them in North Dakota, to figure out, and they're sort of doing it geographically. But they're definitely going to start having plants in that state and really starting to get that market going. But
awesome. So what other states are you interested in? Obviously, I'm sure you have all kinds of insight on the big ones. But
yeah, totally. I wanted to spend a few more minutes talking about Oklahoma. I know we kind of jumped around there.
of course.
But what's really interesting about Oklahoma's market is it's very, I consider it a very conservative market, and people kind of roll their eyes with me. But it's limited regulations, and it's free market, and it's low government interference. So you're seeing the fastest rate of patient registration that you've seen in the country so far. We're about 149 patients per day. 8,500 patients have applied, and 6,700 have been approved.
Right.
So it's unique in the fact that there are no qualifying conditions. So long as a doctor thinks that you deserve and need and can find relief in medical cannabis, then they can write you a recommendation.
That's amazing. I mean, we have such high patient population here in Michigan because we have a very favorable set of qualifying conditions. But obviously, population-wise, Michigan's a bigger state. But a state like Oklahoma, that's such a better design for the way to implement a patient model.
Yeah.
Because really, why is the legislature telling you who gets to use a product and who doesn't? That's clearly a role for physicians. And I really hope we see a lot more states move in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. The state senator that I used to work for in Texas used to say, "Doctors, not politicians, should make healthcare decisions for you." And I think this
and I know
goes to that.
I know from a Michigan perspective, a lot of this industry looks to like an Oklahoma who just put in their medical system, and then we see it moving so quickly. And that really goes to show you how these different states create different types of models. Oklahoma didn't have a 10-year-old existing patient caregiver model that they're trying to figure out a way to transition into. They're starting from scratch. They've designed a system with low regulations. But when you look at the medical marijuana facilities license act here in Michigan, it's a lot of regulations. We were joking in your seminar discussion yesterday that there's 6 pages on toxic waste and there's 57 pages on medical marijuana in Michigan. So, how a state designs this, whether it's a ballot initiative, whether it's a legislature, really, really impacts the timing of implementation. A few things could really slow down the process. Nothing against our decision in Michigan to have a licensing board, but now you bottleneck the industry where everyone needs to have a board's decision. Those are 5 appointed officials. Their schedules don't allow them to meet every day. They have day jobs. So, when they can only schedule 1 meeting per month, they have to get a lot done in those meetings. This month we have 2 scheduled because, they understand there's a need, but when other states design a model that doesn't require things like that, they can be streamlined. I know that's a big problem in Massachusetts, the licensing board.
Yeah, and that's why I think Oklahoma is really unique. They've gone in the opposite direction of that. The law was written by a very passionate group of advocates, but as a result of that, they really wanted to make the licensing process easier. Right. So you submit an online application. You have about 6 criteria that you have to meet. And the department has 14 days to tell you you're approved, you have a deficiency, or you're good to go. And again, most of them are just being approved. It's a checklist is the application process. So
let's not harp on Oklahoma too much, or everyone in Michigan is going to be very mad.
So let's talk about the flip side of the coin really quick then. Is the market is incredibly saturated in Oklahoma. It is going to be a little bit of an experiment in the free market to see what happens. I mean, you have 531 dispensaries licensed in Oklahoma right now. That's for every 12 patients, there's 1 dispensary.
Yeah, obviously not sustainable.
Not sustainable. There are 824 grows in Oklahoma right now. So that's almost getting on par to what Colorado has in a very mature market, and 224 processors. So there's got to be some sort of cap or limitation that the legislature is going to adopt. We just don't know what that looks like yet.
Right.
And another interesting thing that will happen that I think that Michigan's doing good, that maybe Oklahoma didn't have as much foresight doing, is local control. You know, I know it can be frustrating whenever municipalities vote to ban or to opt out, but right now you have operators who don't have local approval because there is no local approval process. Like, they have a state license, and at some point the municipalities are going to have to reckon with existing operators, and a lot of that is uncharted territory.
So they have their own share of messes to deal with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Different message. Yeah, absolutely.
So like I said, Oklahoma's fascinating, and I think the way we watch, we don't get to talk about the national perspective very often, but we're seeing so many more states coming online, having created an industry from scratch, and I really think the next big thing is going to be figuring out a solution to interstate commerce. We have, states like Washington with all kinds of production, looking at new states as they have to design a system of cultivation, saying, why am I sitting on rotting stock when, New Jersey is going to design a bunch of growers, and, there's no reason that they couldn't get my product in there, and we can create a system that makes more sense. But Oklahoma needs to grow all of Oklahoma's marijuana. California has to grow all of California's marijuana. Michigan has to grow all of Michigan's marijuana. As we continue to push these states forward, even if the different systems don't mesh, even if there's different insights and challenges for each state, the more we get these states to embrace, the more we celebrate wins in Oklahoma and North Dakota, and Utah and Missouri as they push these forward, in Michigan, we're going to eventually get to a tipping point where we fix and adjust the intrastate challenges and really push our governments to start embracing some of those changes to this industry that are going to really dynamically fix a lot of different things. As soon as we allow interstate commerce for our state to interact with all the other cannabis states, that's going to dynamically change your ability to operate as a cultivator, for better or for worse. If you're a store, you're going to have a big suite of products you maybe never had access to before. So watching all these other states is kind of really forecasting to us, the states that allow a healthy cultivation market, or the states that allow a healthy point of sale market, that's just Oklahoma today. But 5 years from now, maybe sooner than that, part of your business model might be sourcing products into those states the same way like our alcohol industry does. So it's important to keep in mind what every other state's doing, because whatever Michigan's focusing on today, is what the deal is today in Michigan. But this isn't going to be just a Michigan industry for too long. There's no end in sight for cannabis as far as I can see. We're up to over 30 states now. We're about to go into double digits for adult use if North Dakota and Michigan, vote yes on their propositions. So, at some point, we're not going to be a state industry. We're going to be a national industry, and understanding where your role is going to be in that is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that tipping point is coming a lot faster than any of us anticipate. I think the States Act, with Elizabeth Warren and Cory Gardner from Colorado and Massachusetts, a very conservative U.S. Senator from Colorado and a very liberal U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, have come together in sort of an ironic way. Jeff Sessions being so anti-marijuana and pulling a lot of the Cole Memo protections that sort of established a loose federal framework has fired off a backlash. And I read on the news today a couple sort of congressional cannabis leaders are talking to President Trump, and he's telling him, after the midterms, we'll really start to tackle this issue. And I know everything the president says you have to take with a grain of salt, but it's an easy issue for politicians to win on, and I think people on the national level are finally starting to realize that.
The conversation around cannabis really seems to be shifting from, it's not one party's issue, is which party's going to take it to their advantage the most.
Exactly.
Right? Because forever there was this assumption, it seems like Democrats support marijuana, but, historically, not necessarily, and now Republicans are saying, this isn't dangerous for us to embrace, and you might see the Republican Party be the champions of marijuana. Look at Michigan, for example. A Republican legislature signed by a Republican governor created the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely, I would consider it a nonpartisan issue. Like, you have a lot of people like Chuck Schumer and Senator Feinstein from California, who used to be adamantly opposed to cannabis, and have finally felt the political wind shift and started to change and adopt that. And my favorite quote is from a super conservative legislator in Texas. He used to say, "God didn't make a mistake with a plant that the government needs to fix." And that's what he would tell people in the legislature. He's like, "Why are we criminalizing this? God made this plant." And just a very unique perspective. But we are going to see a move nationally. 49 states recognize the benefit of cannabis, and what that means is that includes states like Georgia and Texas that see CBD as a value. a medical benefit, and those are just like baby stepping stones for a larger industry.
And if you're playing at home, it's Idaho. Idaho is the one state that is
nothing
absolutely yet. And there's movement there too.
Yeah, it was just vetoed by the governor. They had a sort of a low
tried.
THC, high CBD program that they developed, but it was vetoed by the governor. We're predicting by the end of 2018 this is going to be a $10.9 billion national industry. Right. There is a lot of money coming in. By the end of 2020, it's going to be a $20.8 billion. I read a really interesting article in Forbes that say they estimate 300,000 jobs are going to be created by 2020, which is actually going to surpass the manufacturing sector.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's super crazy, but it's also, you have a lot of rural towns that sort of embrace cultivation, embrace processing, recognize that it can be a sort of an economic driver for the community.
It's a crop that you can make money off of. And for agriculture, there's been a lot of challenges there as in that industry sector. Well, people can still make money growing this plant.
Yeah.
And, we were mentioning how it might be an interstate national industry soon. Well, watching Canada, we might be an international industry before we become a national industry here in America. So, things are moving so fast that, it's really hard for any sector of this industry to keep up with it. And, luckily we have you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we all got to look after each other. That's my thing. And it's interesting you're talking about importing. So Tilray, which is a really big Canadian cannabis company, is working with the University of San Diego researchers to import their cannabis products to do some groundbreaking research in San Diego. So that was the first example of like when the U.S. has authorized imports from Canada. So it's going to be
first of many, hopefully.
Yeah.
It might not be fast at the federal level, but we're seeing things happen. So.
Yeah, we are seeing. For every frustration, there's definitely something that you can hang your hat on in advancement in the industry.
Right. So I know we spent a lot of time in Oklahoma. Are there other states that exciting things are happening?
Yeah. One thing I wanted to sort of talk about was when we look at a national market, we really see two types of market. We see an open market and we see a closed market. And so an open market is where the state does not cap licenses. Those would be states like Oregon, Washington, California, Michigan on a statewide level is an open market. And Oklahoma is the same way. Well, a lot of states are going in the opposite direction and they're having closed markets. So the state of Ohio only allotted a certain amount of processors, a certain amount of cultivation. Same with Pennsylvania. And one state to me that's really intriguing, that's sort of the opposite of Oklahoma and like administrative streamline is Florida. And that's really turned out to be sort of a bureaucratic mess with the way that the Department of Health has rolled out that program. They started with just a handful of low THC operators. Then they passed a constitutional amendment, I think in 2016, that says, okay, the state can license full THC spectrum plants. Well, the first operators that were low THC, they got turned over, and then it turned into a game of lawsuits. Like, well, I was denied a license the first round. I'm going to sue the state. I'm going to get a license.
I shouldn't ask this because I only passingly know the story, but there were supposed to be 10 operators, and then enough lawsuits got them up to 13.
Exactly. And the most recent instance of a lawsuit is a judge ruled the entire thing unconstitutional the way the Department of Health was rolling it out. Because the Department of Health said you had to be a vertically integrated operator. So you get a license for a grow, a processor, and a dispensary, up to 25 dispensaries. We said that's nowhere in law. Vertical integration is not mandated in law. And it was a year ago, a couple days from now, that they were supposed to have awarded the next round of licenses. And the Department of Health just completely missed that deadline. Right. And so sometimes bureaucrats can sort of get in their own way. And now Florida is just like, if you don't like what's going on, you just file a lawsuit to pause the whole thing. Right. So the judge has issued another. He says by the end of October, you have to start the licensing process back up. But we don't know what that means because the state can then appeal it. And is this ultimately going to go to the Supreme Court? And then does it matter? Like, Florida's going to have a new governor in January. Is everybody going to wait for that? Well, then legislative session. Then suddenly you're 2 years behind these granting of licenses. And Florida licenses, because it's a closed market, which means only a certain amount of operators can enter it in. It's not wide open. You have to get awarded a license from the state. They're incredibly valuable.
Sure.
I mean, we saw a license go for $50 million in Florida. Some nursery applied, got it, and then a big-time operator bought them for over $50 million. But they have a very, very robust patient market, which is really interesting. I mean, they have 133,000 qualified patients.
Wow.
So those operators, whenever they get up and running, are going to make a significant chunk of change. I mean, Florida had the highest patient growth rates, and then Oklahoma has now set the bar. So we're sort of
hard to compete with that.
Yeah, well, we're starting to see a new normal in patient registrations. We have a brilliant economist at our office. His name is Andrew Livingston. He models these states out of projection models, and he has like a slow, moderate, and fast sort of tracks for patient growth and estimates. all of the patient numbers are coming in very fast now.
Right.
And that's access to doctors, and that's eliminating qualifying conditions.
And I think a big part of it too is just acceptance. Like people aren't scared to declare themselves marijuana patients anymore because culturally, you know, the difference between today and 5 years ago is significant.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've experienced this too. But you know, as soon as your family tells you that you're in the cannabis legal world, they start whispering like, you know, I really would like to become a patient to get some topicals for my knee, or what do you think about this? Or and you're like, I don't know, you should do it.
It's a cultural shift. I mean,
it is.
If you look at alcohol, and I hate to always use alcohol as the comparison, but you know, everyone understands what alcohol is, and they understand some people drink, some people don't, some people drink too much, some people drink professionally, but drinking is just a part of our culture. Well, cannabis has always been a part of our culture as well. It's just always been a part of our kind of like illicit culture. You know? It's never it's not been legal for the last 100 years. And, you know, because you kind of have to stay, you know, tight-lipped about it, you know, it doesn't mean it isn't happening, but culturally speaking, you know, there can be social implications for embracing cannabis. And now we're starting to see that really change, especially in states like Colorado. If you're not comfortable with cannabis and you go to Colorado, well, it's everywhere. It's not that you have to be engaged with it. It's not that you have to, you know, smoke it or have secondhand smoke it. It's just, you know, there's access to it. Everyone treats it as normal. Yeah. And you know, parts of Michigan, you know, it isn't. And we might see that dynamic change happen quickly. And you're seeing that in other states.
Absolutely. I mean, people go to Colorado, they go to California, and they realize the sky hasn't fallen, right? I mean, and that's the biggest deal. And that's really a credit to the industry and the operators, right? Jordan Wellington from Simplify yesterday said something really eloquent. He says compliance is going to be the linchpin of the industry, right? If we had a whole bunch of really negative and bad and poor operators that were just facilitating the black market, there would be a lot of terrible news stories. And the industry as a whole would get shut down. But the fact that you have an industry that's responsible, and then you've had these really interesting studies, you know, in states with a reliable medical marijuana industry or a legalization industry, you see opioid emergency room visits go down. We haven't seen teen use increase in Colorado. So all of these things that prohibitionists for years and years and years have told us are going to happen have just proved out the opposite.
Right. And they still pretend like that's not the case. Like, you know, like you look at news stories of like, you know, elected officials in Colorado that ran against marijuana and now fully support it. Well, why would that be happening if the world was terrible out in Colorado? Your property taxes are 10 times higher than the rest of the country, allegedly. Everyone's going to the hospital because cannabis is ruining lives. Apparently, it's a third world hell country over there in Colorado, but it seemed pretty nice when I was there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, prohibitionists can tell you that the sky is purple, and you're like, no, I can see it right now, it's blue. And they're like, no, it's purple, and the kids are going to get hurt.
My favorite thing to do is, like, you're claiming things are happening in Colorado. Why don't you just call and ask?
Yeah,
you know? Like absolutely. Literally, like, you know, you come in, you hear the reefer madness. I hear this in news poll meetings all the time. You're like, everyone in Colorado is so angry about this, this, and this. I'm like, well, I mean, I don't believe you. You can go ask them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, politicians are always the last person to come out of the stigma, no matter what the issue is. You know, they tend to be behind the populace across the board on issues. But, you know, Missouri and Utah are going to put in really impressive numbers in this campaign. Oklahoma clocked in at 57%. So politicians just need to realize they have the political cover. You know, it's okay to come out in front of this issue, and you will be amazed by the positive reception that you'll get. I worked for a state senator in Texas, and he filed the first comprehensive medical marijuana bill, and people came out of the woodwork to thank us, from veterans to moms to cancer patients, because it's a needed medicine out there. And once politicians, you know, embrace it, they're going to get positive response from their constituents. And I think that's what's really going to move this issue forward.
All of the things that are really negative about cannabis are a result of it being treated as criminal conduct. They're a result of it being treated as something you're not supposed to do. Well, the only reason you're not supposed to do it is because it comes with criminal liability. You know, as you start embracing it, even if you're not a consumer, even if you want nothing to do with it, just treating it the way it should be treated really dynamically changes the way you can, you know, embrace an industry like this for the benefit of your state.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're starting to see members of Congress recognize that, sort of going back to the national scope and the States Act. I mean, you're seeing people from both sides of the aisle recognizing that, like, you know, these are outdated laws, they don't make any sense, and that regulation works. And regulations benefits patients, they benefit municipalities, and they help make successful entrepreneurs. So it's really a trifecta.
All right. So Dwight, we have a lot of work for you to do today since you're here in Michigan.
Absolutely.
Anything else before we wrap up? Anything else you want to mention?
No. I really appreciate being in Detroit. It's always fun to get to hang out with my friends at Cannabis Legal Group. I appreciate being invited on your Facebook Live. I watch it every week. So I feel like I'm my own celebrity now.
Hey, you're Facebook famous.
Absolutely. But thanks for the great hospitality. I love Detroit, and I think Michigan's an amazing opportunity for any cannabis entrepreneurs out there.
Definitely. Well, we're happy to have you. Thanks so much for joining us today, for coming, and all of your team that came and joined us yesterday. And we're excited to keep working with you in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Travis.
Thanks, guys. So for Travis Copenhaver and
Dwight Clark,
we'll see you next week.